Good to be here.
Today, we're plunging into, well, one of history's most fascinating and, frankly, paradoxical states, the
Yeah.
Qin state.
hmm
Imagine this realm that managed to be, righteous in its goals, but often wicked in its methods. Vast, powerful, but also incredibly complex.
Yeah, what's really striking is how the very things that drove Qin to unify China and achieve so much also contained these deep moral issues, these ambiguities that eventually led to its downfall. It's quite the mix.
It really is. So our mission today is to try and unpack that blend. I want to grapple with, I guess, the central question. What exactly led to this profound mix of good and evil, this immense complexity, all within one state?
It's a big question.
Definitely. Okay, let's start unpacking. We've touched on some tough aspects before, but today we're looking at the whole picture. Let's start at the foundation. Xiangyang, the initiator of these huge reforms. What kind of impact did his radical vision have on Qin's strength, and maybe more importantly, its character?
Shang Yang's reforms were absolutely foundational, a double-edged sword, really.
How so?
While on one hand, his legalist policies, things like giving land directly to farmers, setting up the strict merit-based bureaucracy, they undeniably forged an incredibly efficient, powerful state machine.
Right, which you could argue is righteous for a state trying to survive and prosper in that era.
Exactly. It gave Qin a serious edge. But on the other hand, these reforms completely dismantled the old aristocratic ways, leading to this intensely centralized, almost brutal authority.
Brutal how?
Think of a system where even small mistakes met with really severe punishments. It reveals that rigid, sometimes, wicked core beneath the efficiency, order at a very high price.
Okay, so efficiency built on an iron fist, basically.
Yeah.
But Qin's rise wasn't just internal structuring, right? It involved some serious political maneuvering.
Yeah.
And that brings us to Fanju, a real master of the game, it seems.
Oh, absolutely. Fanju is a perfect example of the kind of cunning needed back then.
His actions really highlight both the strategic brilliance and the ruthless side of Qin politics. How did his particular brand of strategy play out?
His most famous strategy was probably Yuanjun Gong, attack the distant, befriend the near.
Yeah.
Basically, team up with faraway states to help you conquer your neighbors, then, turn on those allies later when they're no longer useful.
Wow, okay, effective, but...
Exactly. Incredibly effective for Qin's expansion, definitely. But it also perfectly captures the ruthlessness, the betrayal, that was often part of their power politics. Morally very ambiguous, to say the least.
It shows their power wasn't just brute force then. It was also this sophisticated, if cynical, political chess game.
Precisely.
And speaking of force, what about the sheer military might? That brings us to Baiki and Wang Jin, the engines of war, you could call them. Their stories seem central to understanding Qin's scale.
They were devastatingly effective generals, no question. Bai Qi especially. His victory at Chengqing is infamous.
Where hundreds of thousands were supposedly massacred.
That's the account, yes. Their campaigns absolutely drove Qin's expansion and eventual unification, but it forces you to ask, right? Can that kind of military success, achieving the state's goals, ever really exist without huge moral compromises, especially considering the sheer human cost involved?
That's a heavy question.
Yeah.
And it leads us maybe to a more poignant figure. The loyal minister, Meng Tian. His story, his reflections, they offer such a stark contrast. What does his fate tell us?
Meng Tian's story is it's incredibly revealing. It shows the human side amidst all the grand strategy and conquest.
He was loyal, wasn't he? Fought campaigns, built the Great Wall.
Deeply loyal. He led massive campaigns against the Xiongnu, oversaw huge construction projects. Yet, despite all that service, the second emperor forced him to commit suicide.
Just like that?
Just like that. And what's really poignant are his final words. He didn't really express regret for his actions, but sorrow for his king's likely fate, and maintained his loyalty. It's a glimpse into the personal toll, the vulnerability, even for the most powerful within that regime.
A sobering reminder of the human cost. Okay, finally, let's turn to a moment of challenge. The rebellion led by Chen Sheng and Wu Guang, and that unforgettable question they raised. Are kings, dukes, generals, and ministers born to their ranks? What's the significance of that cry?
Oh, that question hit right at the heart of everything. It fundamentally challenged the Qin's whole power structure, this centralized, supposedly merit-based, but ultimately tyrannical system.
It must have resonated.
Deeply. especially with ordinary people crushed by harsh laws, endless forced labor. It exposed the grievances, the instability simmering beneath the surface, even in this supposedly perfectly ordered state. It showed that the righteous pursuit of order had become overwhelmingly oppressive.
And it sort of signaled the beginning of the end.
It really did. It highlighted that Qin's legacy wouldn't just be unification, but also a reign seen as brief, brutal, and ultimately unsustainable because of that very brutality.
So wrapping this up, trying to understand the Qin state, it's clear it was this place of huge achievements, yes, driven by these powerful figures, brilliant strategies, but just riddled with moral complexity, contradictions.
Exactly. This deep dive really shows that Qin wasn't monolithic. It was this, I don't know, thrilling, maybe terrifying mix of conflicting forces. Efficiency born from brutality, brilliance mixed with betrayal, grand ambition leading to both unity and immense suffering.
Which brings us back to that central question.
Indeed. What intricate tapestry of decisions, personalities, circumstances led to such a profound blend of righteous and wicked, all wrapped up in this immense complexity? It's something that echoes beyond just the Qin.
Definitely something for you, our listeners, to mull over as you think about empires, ancient and modern. We hope this deep dive has given you a useful shortcut to understanding this truly captivating and complicated period of history.
How did they even begin to build that kind of professional bureaucracy? Especially without things like the later imperial exams.
It's a great question, because achieving that kind of deep reach right down to the grassroots level, well, it required this huge body of trained officials.
An army of bureaucrats, basically.
Pretty much. And the paradox is, how did they find them? How did they train them? What's really fascinating, I think, is how systematic they were about it and how early it started. We're talking adolescence.
Right. Okay. So let's get into that. This systematic project, starting when officials were basically kids, it sounds like getting into one of these official schools was a massive opportunity.
Ooh, absolutely massive.
Yeah.
These schools, Dazushi, they were specifically set up to train future bureaucrats.
Yeah.
And get this, they were apparently in every county.
Every county. Wow.
Yeah. And the demand was huge. Way more applicants than spots. We even have regulations found on bamboo slips saying basically if you weren't what they called a Shizi, you couldn't even get into study.
Okay, Shizi. That sounds important. What exactly was that?
Shizi referred to the sons of officials engaged in clerical work in the state of Qin. Shizi trained in reading, writing, and family-inherited knowledge. They served as reserves for clerical roles and became a key source of the state's 文法力, following their father's career paths.
There are debates, right?
There are. Some think it might mean like sons of officials, sort of hereditary. But whatever the specifics, getting that Shizi status was clearly key. It wasn't easy.
And the big draw, I read about this, students were exempt from corvée labor while they studied. That's huge.
Exactly. Unpaid, backbreaking public works. Yeah, avoiding that was a serious incentive.
So appealing that people tried to cheat the system.
You got it. Qin law actually had penalties for impersonating a Shizi. A county captain caught hiding fake students. Fined 2 sets of armor. That's serious.
Wow.
And kind of funny, the real Shizi often didn't want to leave school. If they didn't give up their student status right after graduating, they could get punished.
Punished how?
With something called naiweihyo.
Yeah.
It involved having their beards shaved off, super humiliating, and then being assigned to tough reconnaissance labor.
Ouch. Talk about harsh. And it wasn't just about graduating, was it? Performance mattered. A lot.
Oh, definitely. The laws were incredibly strict. There's this example, like, if a student couldn't even learn to drive a chariot properly after 4 years.
4 years?
Yeah, 4 years, the teacher would be fined a shield. And the student sentenced to 4 years of hard labor.
That's unbelievable. It sounds like the message was pretty clear. Buckle down and study, or else.
Exactly. It was basically embrace the hardship of studying now, or you'll face much worse hardships later. And if you think about the bigger picture, the whole curriculum was intensely practical. It was all about making effective officials.
And the teachers were actual officials.
Yep, a real system of teaching based on laws, taking officials as teachers. It wasn't abstract learning.
It reminds me of that story about Zhang Yu, the later rival of Liu Bang. As a kid, he supposedly wasn't interested in writing or swordsmanship.
Ah, yeah, the famous quote.
Right. He apparently said something like, writing is just for recording names. Swordsmanship only beats one person. I want to learn how to defeat 10,000.
That line about writing being only enough to record names, it actually tells us a lot.
How so?
Well, think about when Sheng Yu was young. Qin had already conquered his home state of Shu. His education, even if informal, was likely shaped by Qin practices. And what did grassroots Qin officials do all day?
Register households, collect taxes, conscript labor.
Exactly. And record confessions. All tasks requiring you to constantly write down names over and over. It wasn't lofty, aristocratic learning. It was practical, bureaucratic grind.
Makes sense. Even later texts like that Han Dynasty primer, the GGPN, apparently borrowed from Qin methods and were just full of names.
Packed with them. So yeah, it was very practical training, almost like on-the-job training, but in a school.
And not just writing, I assume. Military officials would need combat skills, right? To catch criminals and that sort of thing.
Precisely. And another fascinating piece is the emphasis on math. You can't run an empire or even a county without decent arithmetic.
All that data. Taxes, grain, land.
Exactly. We've found Qin bamboo slips with loads of numerical records, even a multiplication table. And later math texts, like the 9 chapters on the mathematical art, draw heavily on methods from this period. They're full of problems officials would face daily.
Like land measurement, grain conversions.
Civil engineering calculations, allocating taxes fairly. Really practical stuff.
So those were the basics. But for higher level officials, it get more complex.
Oh, absolutely. They need to understand the subtleties of administrative documents, like the difference between an emperor's Ming, which might be a more flexible order, and a Ling, which was a mandatory command, no wiggle room.
And law, presumably. A deep grasp of legal codes.
Definitely. The Book of Han mentions imperial historians assessing students, and you needed to recite, 9,000 characters just to qualify for office.
9,000. It sounds like a remarkably sophisticated training system for its time.
It really was. Yeah. But despite all this preparation, a massive problem cropped up right after Qin Shi Huang unified the country.
Right. Because conquering 6 states in, a decade? That's one thing. Ruling them as a single empire, that's a whole different ballgame.
Totally different scale of challenge.
Yeah.
Which raises the question, how did they plan to manage this sudden, massive expansion of governance?
And did they plan?
Well, that's the interesting part. In 221 BCE, the very year they finished the conquests, there was this critical debate at court. The prime minister, Wang Wan, he suggested a kind of hybrid approach.
What did that involve?
He proposed setting up feudal lords Qin Shi Huang's own sons, actually in the really distant, newly conquered areas, places like Yan, Qi, Chu, but keep the existing commandery and county system closer to home.
Sort of a pragmatic compromise.
Exactly. Most ministers apparently agreed. It seemed like a practical way to stabilize things far away, keep the locals calm.
But Li Si, the Minister of Justice, he disagreed. Strongly.
He did. Li Si argued that the old Zhou dynasty feudalism was inherently unstable. He pointed out how family ties weakened over generations, leading to constant war.
His point being?
His point was, if you really want to unify the world and have lasting peace, you need to roll out the commandery and county system everywhere. Total standardization for easier imperial control.
And Qin Shi Huang bought it.
He sided with Li Si. He basically said, yeah, the endless wars were because of feudal lords. Li Si's plan is the way to peace. Now, Li Si was probably right about the long-term historical trend.
But the immediate problem?
The immediate problem was people. The number of officials needed for Li Si's comprehensive system versus Wang Wan's hybrid system was astronomically different.
Right. Feudalism, sent a prince, some advisors, an army, let the local bigwigs handle the details. Few new central officials needed.
Exactly. But the commandery county system, you sweep away the old local aristocracy. You need Qin-style administrative departments in every single county, staffed by officials loyal to Qin and trained in Qin laws and procedures.
Which created an instant, massive personnel shortage.
A huge shortage.
Yeah.
And what's telling is that this whole crucial debate happened after unification was already complete. It suggests they hadn't really prepped for this administrative reality.
And that Shizi rule we talked about, limiting who could even enter the schools, that also came after unification.
It seems so, yes.
Which
Which makes you wonder, were some people in power maybe trying to protect existing officials' jobs by limiting the pool of new trainees?
So unpreparedness plus maybe some internal resistance, it meant a huge gap in the bureaucracy was almost guaranteed.
Pretty much inevitable, yeah. So the next question is, how did they actually govern these new, distant territories, given the shortage?
We have some clues now, don't we, from archaeology?
We do. Finds like the Yulu Qin slips and the Lai Qin slips, discovered in these exact kinds of regions, give us incredible ground-level detail. But even just looking at traditional sources, like the story of Liu Bang's hometown, Pei County, gives us a good idea.
Okay, so the top county guys, the magistrate, his assistant, the county captain, they were sent from the central court, Supervised by imperial censors, standard practice.
Right. But the middle and lower level officials, that's where it got complicated. It was a real mixed bag.
A mixed bag how?
Well, you had some regularly appointed officials, sure, but not enough. Then you had officials who'd actually messed up somewhere else, failed assessments, and were basically punished by being shipped off to these new regions.
Like being exiled to the frontiers?
Sort of, yeah. And even more incredibly, some were former criminals who'd lost their posts, but were given a second chance serving out there.
Seriously?
Uh-huh.
Criminals? That doesn't sound like a recipe for good governance.
Probably wasn't. The quality of these new region officials was often pretty questionable. We even see Qin regulations specifically telling them not to mistreat the new commoners.
Which implies they probably were mistreating them.
Exactly. The rule wouldn't exist if the problem didn't.
So besides these recycled officials, what else did they do? Did they try hiring locals?
They did. That was another strategy. If a local person seemed capable, adequately trained, they could be appointed. Which brings us back to unifying the writing system.
Ah, right. It wasn't just about culture, it was practical, making sure imperial orders could be read locally.
And just as importantly, making sure local reports could be read and understood back at the capital. It was about that two-way flow of information and control.
Makes perfect sense.
But here's the kicker, the real irony. When you connect all the dots,
Go on.
in places like P County, you had key local positions filled by guys like, well, Liu Bang,
Yeah.
Zhao He, Cao Can.
The future founders of the Han Dynasty.
The very same. These men had basically zero inherent loyalty to the Qin regime that had conquered their homeland. Yet the Qin's own administrative system
was giving them invaluable hands-on training in how to run things, how to organize people.
exactly. It was like a master class in management and bureaucracy, delivered courtesy of the regime they would eventually overthrow. What do you think the long-term consequences of that were?
Well, we know the consequences. These guys became the leaders, the organizers, the backbone of the rebellion that brought down the Qin. Wow. It's almost like the Qin system was so effective at training administrators.
It trained its own destroyers.
Yeah.
Precisely. It's a powerful lesson. And it also helps explain something else.
Which is?
Why, even though the Qin dynasty itself collapsed so quickly, its fundamental administrative structure, the commanderies, the counties, the bureaucratic methods, largely survived.
Yeah.
The Han dynasty basically inherited it, tweaked it, but kept the core. It shaped Chinese governance for centuries.
So the system outlasted the dynasty that created it.
In a big way. The Qin administrative system, despite its flaws and that ultimate ironic twist, was truly a marvel of organization for its time. That systematic approach to cultivating officials, the practical focus, even their sometimes desperate measures to fill the gaps, it all played a part in their rise and ultimately their fall.
It really is an incredible story. Ambition, innovation, pragmatism, and then these completely unintended consequences. The takeaway maybe isn't just about the Qin, is it?
I don't think so.
Perhaps it's a reminder that even the most carefully designed systems, the most efficient machines of state, can contain the seeds of their own undoing, or at least their own transformation. Sometimes the most effective training ends up empowering the very people who challenge the power structure.
Well put. A system so focused on control inadvertently created the tools for its own dismantling.
Join us next time on The Deep Dive as we explore.
If you found this discussion useful, maybe learned something new, definitely hit that subscribe button. We do these deep dives regularly, exploring valuable ideas.
We appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.